this is not OptiPlex, not even close. This is HufflePlex. HufflePlex is a modified Dell OptiPlex 3070 that I had sitting in its box doing nothing. HufflePlex came born out of an idea that I had for my girlfriend's younger sister's birthday. And before her birthday, a few weeks prior to that, she mentioned to me that she had a gaming laptop that had an i7 dual core, I think it was a 2nd gen i7, I can't remember off the top of my head, but had 8 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM, a 5400 RPM hard drive, and the laptop doesn't even hold a charge. I decided to run the idea by my girlfriend in making her younger sister a gaming computer out of the 3070 I had left over, and she loved the idea. The only thing is we kind of wanted to make it a little bit more personalized for her sister, and we came up with the idea of making a Harry Potter themed PC because she's a big fan of Harry Potter. I didn't really want to do just the typical Harry Potter, you know, the lightning bolt, the logo, and everything like that. We wanted to make it, again, more personalized. So we ended up tricking my girlfriend's younger sister into taking the house quiz again, and she came out as a HufflePuff, which she was actually quite happy with that result. So we decided to do a HufflePuff themed modified Dell OptiPlex 3070, and I've named it HufflePlex. So obviously, as you can see, the first thing that sticks out to you is the windowed side panel. I actually measured OptiFlex and did the exact same cuts and all the dimensions that I did. I had all the leftover acrylic used on the side panel for the side panel on HufflePlex, as well as the edge rubber from OptiFlex. I had a little bit left over, which I put on the outside of this side panel as well. Another modification that I had to do was I had to remove the CD drive bay and the hard drive bay in HufflePlex in order to get things to fit. Same thing with OptiFlex. So once I had all the components out of the computer, I kind of wanted to personalize it a little bit more with some new color inside the computer, kind of like I did with OptiFlex and being black on the inside. Now we decided to go with the HufflePuff house colors, which is black and yellow, which is why I'm wearing a yellow t-shirt with a black hoodie on. I originally wanted to dress up as like a HufflePuff house member. Unfortunately, that costume didn't come and it kind of got delayed in transit from Amazon, so that didn't work out. So I just did the next best thing, okay? The interior of the computer case is the yellowy gold, as well as the rear I/O on the back of the computer case as well. And again, the other house color is black, so the rest of the computer is black with a black front panel. The next modification that we did was, since I had the motherboard out of the case, I painted it black, because the green motherboard did not contrast well with the gold yellowy color and the black. So we had to make the motherboard black. I also have a video on that if you're interested in painting a motherboard. It'll be in the upper right hand corner if you're interested in it. It'll also be in the description below. And I figured I might as well throw in the old CPU cooler that I had for OptiFlex originally, which was the AliExpress 92mm cooler. And the Arctic fans that I took out in the last video will also be thrown in there as well. Now I know what you're thinking is, like, you said the Arctic fans weren't that great. Yes, for an i9, but they're just perfectly fine for an i3 9100, which is the CPU in here. That is what came bundled with this 3070, and I think it will treat her well because it is a quad-core CPU that I think boosts up to, what, 4.2 gigahertz, I believe. The next modification that we did was I actually peeled apart some Corsair Vengeance DDR4 2400 megahertz RAM that I had laying around, and I slapped on some custom ones with RGB light bars on the top of them. Those are the same RGB heatsinks that are inside OptiFlex from EZDIY-FAB, and I think that tied the build kind of really well together because I was able to add kind of RGB to this computer, and her sister is a big fan of RGB. So we can obviously change the colors with this little remote here. The kit came with a wireless RGB controller for this remote, and I decided to go with the yellow color on the inside just to keep the theme going with black and yellow. This remote also obviously has some magnets on the top of it, so the remote will never get lost. Another component that we went with for the computer build, which is also RGB, is an M.2 RGB Heatsink from EZDIY-FAB. We threw in a 250 gigabyte M.2 SSD, which is going to be such an upgrade from the dual core i7, 2nd generation i7. 8 gigabytes of DDR3, running on a 5400 RPM hard drive. This is going to perform night and day compared to that laptop. So the power supply I painted black, but we wanted to obviously, again, keep it in line with the HufflePuff and Harry Potter theme. And my girlfriend and I were discussing the Harry Potter movies, and she mentioned how one of her favorite parts was the invisibility cloak that they used in the movie. And I remember during that scene, they used a map that showed where pretty much everybody was in real time. It was kind of like an advanced UAV or Blackbird from Call of Duty.
UAV online.
That's how I look at it anyway. Quote that they had to say, or the password they had to say, was, "I solemnly swear I'm up to no good." and I thought that was perfect to put on the side of the power supply. And it turned out super good. I'm super happy with it. It came out really cool. So we ended up going with a GTX 1650, and I know you're probably thinking that's not the greatest graphics card in the world, and you're right. This is just an entry-level gaming PC to get her toes wet with PC gaming and building your own PC and things like that, but it's still gonna be a night and day difference from that laptop. Modification that we did to the 1650, because it didn't come with a backplate, was we put a custom backplate on it, which was Harry Potter and HufflePuff themed. I decided to put the badger of the HufflePuff house and the HufflePuff kind of text on a backplate of the 1650, and it turned out super well. I leveraged my brother's help because he is an automotive painter at a dealership, and he helped me make this backplate come into reality. So shoutouts to him. That was probably my favorite part of the build for HufflePlex, was the backplate of the GPU. I think that's going to wrap up all the modifications that I made to HufflePlex. So let's get into some benchmarks of HufflePlex. That is very hard to say, by the way. But keep your expectations in check for HufflePlex, because again, this is an i3-9100 and a GTX 1650. Not the most powerful parts in the world, but they run pretty cool and they get the job done for 1080p gaming at like medium settings. Let's jump into the benchmarks and let's see what HufflePlex has got. The first game that we're going to benchmark on HufflePlex is going to be Doom Eternal. Now, Doom Eternal is extremely well optimized, and I'm really not surprised by the numbers that we got for HufflePlex, running only a 1650 and an i3. So the maximum FPS was 138, the average FPS was 108, the minimum FPS was 87, the 1% low was 77, and the 0.1% low was 65. So as you can see, Doom Eternal ran really well, but that's really no surprise because it is Doom Eternal, and it's extremely well optimized when using the Vulkan API. And keep in mind, we ran this test at 1080p with the medium preset with no motion blur enabled. So the next game that we're going to move on to is BioMutant. So we're going to benchmark the newly released BioMutant. I'm actually really liking the game so far, and it's a beautiful looking game, so I thought it would be a good fit for testing on HufflePlex. So the maximum FPS was 92, the average was 78, the minimum was 62, the 1% low was 45, and the 0.1% low was 7. Now the 0.1% low with the 7 FPS result kind of came from the cutscene would end and then the gameplay would begin. It kind of had some weird frame time pacing issues there, but it seemed to level itself out the more I started playing. So I don't exactly know if that's a driver issue or if it's a game, but moving on to the next game. So the next game they're going to be benchmarking is Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider is a very demanding game, obviously, and it's a beautiful looking game, so again, thought it would be a good fit for HufflePlex. The maximum FPS for Shadow of the Tomb Raider was 101, the average FPS was 77, the minimum was 54, the 1% low was 45, and the 0.1% low was 32. So it actually ran Shadow of the Tomb Raider quite well at 1080p medium, and again, no motion blur. All the tests we'll be doing today will have 1080p medium preset and no motion blur. The final game that we're going to be wrapping up the benchmarks with is going to be Battlefield 5. This was on a game of Conquest at 64 players, and it actually ran extremely well, very smooth. I was actually quite surprised on how well it actually ran on a 1650 and an i3. So the maximum FPS for Battlefield 5 was 126, the average was 88 FPS, the minimum was 46, the 1% low was 45, and the 0.1% low was 20. So as you can see, very smooth experience on Battlefield 5. I'm actually extremely happy with the results of HufflePlex, and that is going to conclude the benchmarks here. So those are the benchmarks for HufflePlex. I hope you guys enjoyed the video on HufflePlex. Happy birthday, Caitlin. I hope you enjoy HufflePlex. Take good care of it for me. There was a lot of thought and effort that went into this from your sister and myself. So we really hope you enjoy this gift. I hope you freak out as your sister has mentioned that you probably will. It was a lot of fun putting together, and it got a lot of parts out of my house, so thank you at the same time. This is going to conclude the video here, guys. I want to thank you guys so much for watching the video on HufflePlex. My name's Ken, also known as Wiltshire. Hit that like button and subscribe button if you want to see more things like OptiPlex and HufflePlex in the near future. As always, I will see you guys in the next video. Take care, everyone.